3 years ago. And it's kind of just blossomed out into something a lot bigger. A little bit about myself. My name is Chris Bischoff. I started with Stasis, like I said, about 3 years ago in December. When it was actually a little bit before that, and I actually ended up emailing Mike a design document because I wanted to. I'm an architectural illustrator. I run a company with my brother called Burn 3D. I've run it for about 10 years now. And I wanted to do something that really focused on sort of environments and stuff. I'm not a programmer by a long shot. I'm pretty much exclusively an artist. And I always wanted to work on games like Fallout and Diablo and those sort of really large isometric environments. So I know that in South Africa there weren't really many projects that would allow me to do that. So I decided, so hell with it, let me just kind of make my own. I was inspired by Alien and Aliens and a lot of the sort of 1980s science fiction movies, and also, of course, Sunshine, all the sort of science fiction horrors and thrillers that came out after that. And then, of course, like adventure games, sort of the big resurgence with adventure games with the Double Fine adventure that's just come out. Well, they just had their massive big crowdsourcing thing, and a lot of guys from like Germany is a really big adventure game sort of movement in Germany. And the engine that I'm using is actually an engine by the company Daedalic used for all of their adventure games like the Whispered World and Deponia and those sorts of things. What I do want to do before I go into those, I just want to show you guys the intro to the game, the intro video. It's something I've been working on. You're the first people to actually see it apart from my brother, really. So sort of be gentle with me, please. And then, once the intro is actually done, what I'll do is, while I talk, I'll just run a video I recorded last night. It's about 25 minutes or so of me just kind of playing the game. It's one of the less completed parts of the game, just so I can show you sort of where I am and maybe point out one or two ways that I've actually run about certain things. So yeah, can we turn down the lights even more? It's quite moody in that experience. So basically, at the end of this intro, you will essentially go to the very first screen of the game. So this is how the game will start. lights, I think, very much gives a sort of look and feel for the idea of, I want the game to kind of feel very, very lonely. So I'm going to the next video here.
Yeah, good luck in getting out there. I don't know how. Escape. I know if you press the Windows button and B, it'll take you back to that.
Which one's here?
Before we move on, that is cool.
Yeah, that was brilliant.
Just one niggle. Is that big ship coming out of the mist? It kind of just appeared.
Yeah, it's basically so.
It didn't quite come out of a mist.
How do I turn the volume right down on this?
There's a you press function and down arrow.
Wouldn't think you're in a room of techies.
It's Windows 8. Who knows Windows 8?
It's going down. Just keep doing
There's
this.
Dave Russell in the
Hey, if you keep knocking it, I'll take it away.
I'll just let this is the stuff that I recorded yesterday while I was playing. You can see some nice sort of effects that I've got with the moving lights and that sort of thing. Sorry, you asked.
Just the ship coming out of the mist in the first
yeah.
scene. It kind of just appeared. It didn't
sort of break through.
come out of a mist.
I'm really sort of trying to get that sort of like, upon Independence Day where that comes out of the clouds, but I'll see if I can maybe try to...
Yeah, no, that's the only thing.
Yeah,
But it's freaking amazing.
If that's the only thing, then that's fine. I can release it tomorrow.
I would slow down the smoke to like 700%.
Get a sense of scale, basically.
Yeah.
Okay, no, that's cool.
It does come across a little fast, which makes it look smaller.
Okay.
It's a giant ship.
Okay, fantastic. Yeah, because sort of like a sense of scale in the ship is something that I really also want to get across, because there's a lot of environments actually in the game. I think that your average adventure game nowadays is about 70 screens long or so. Stasis right now is sitting at about 90, and by the end of the game will probably be about 140 screens and environments. Yeah.
Not that you want to recut the intro with these, looks really cool. But the ability to get across kind of the empty, lonely feeling of the ship, I'd be interested to have like shots of the ship as you have there, and then cut to maybe like an interior shot, showing like there's like
Sort of moving through
the
the...
hallway, or just like almost like a static shot of the hallway, or a slightly panning shot where there's nothing happening, like it's dark and
Yes,
quiet, water dripping. Cut back out to more of the ship, and then cut back into like another, showing that the ship is deserted.
Yeah, it's sort of like I really want to get to this kind of early sort of 80s movies. Like that's another. The game's got a lot of cinematics basically, sort of spread all the way throughout.
It's pre-rendered.
Yes, yeah. It's all sort of. Well, the entire game is technically pre-rendered. All of the actual backgrounds that you actually look at are it's essentially entirely animated screens. And what I've done is I cut them up and divided them into smaller sections that allow sort of the interaction between certain things that are going to happen. Yeah.
Sorry, just something. I'm getting you trying to make the game.
There are spelling mistakes and a lot of things that are. So,
But you're playing the game like cinematic essentially, right?
yes, yeah.
For me personally, that arrow is very obtrusive.
I always get flack about the cursor. Like I don't know what to do.
It's I have absolutely no idea about art. It's just that I keep looking at the cursor instead of the things.
So maybe would it be making more transparent or something?
Just
Or
smaller.
smaller?
Just saying, just doing the transitions.
No, I'm just always looking at the cursor.
Yeah, I don't think you can do
Well, how are you supposed to do it?
That's an adventure.
It's essentially.
Yeah,
I mean, it's essentially with the game. I mean, it is sort of like a visual novel to a point, but it does have a lot of interaction. I mean, you can see, you can sort of there's some information stuff that you can click on certain things and you can access certain computer systems and controls. There's a whole system that I've got for.
I would only change one thing. I mean, the cursor's not moving as I've faded down.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that so when you're looking, it just goes back.
Fades
when
away
you
to-
move it, then you can see.
I can definitely do something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It might also be more interesting to have the cursor be more context sensitive. So like, while there you see almost like a pair of feet or boots, you walk
So,
there.
yeah,
If
originally
you look
what-
at something else, then it's interact with.
Originally what I had a like a pie sort of diagram, and each of them basically said walk, scan, interact, and when you went over something you could do it, it would switch to walk or scan, interact. But the feedback I got was that people want a pointy thing to touch things with. So sort of the pie thing, I really liked it, but the feedback I got was basically don't do the pie. The pie thing. People want a cursor. I still personally prefer the pie thing. So yeah, it's back there.
But that'd be kind of cool to do a hand.
A hand to actually grab onto
Kind of
things.
like
Yeah.
actual guy's hand.
Yes, yeah, that could also be something. If you notice, you see where
But you had a little icon underneath.
Yeah.
So you've got You've got context.
Yes, yeah, the little eye comes up, or the hand, or whatever it is when you. This is another one of the computer systems you can actually sort of interact with the game. Generally, if there's a computer screen, it does something. There's a dial.
What's that bar down there?
This over here.
Yeah.
Basically, if you click on something, it's got a description of what's in the actual world. It'll come up. I'll show you some other videos as well where you'll see.
Can't you hide it when it's not doing anything? It's
Okay.
quite obtrusive.
Okay, sort of fade it out and bring it
I would
back in.
actually slide it in from the right.
Yeah.
And then slide it back out.
Yeah,
If you notice,
it's
you'll
useful
see-
now, but it's not always.
Sort of in the bottom corner over there. That's how he actually accesses inventory stuff. And if you look at it again, you'll basically see when he actually opens it, the actual character sort of pulls the thing out of his pocket and sort of, picks it up and looks at it and that sort of thing. So I'm really trying to get it kind of as cinematic as possible. The thing is that, like I said, I'm not a programmer by a long shot. Literally, when I started this, I used to do games with my brother. We made a game called Blast Radius, which was a Scorched Earth sort of clone, and another one called Alien Me, which was a sort of harkening back to Star Control 2 and stuff. But I've literally done the programming, sound design, music, even the voices are my horrible South African accent coming through for like all the voices, which will be eventually replaced with professional voice artists. So it's the nice thing is that I think a lot of you guys as programmers have a problem in that you want art assets. And it's sort of a thing in that, is it better to be an artist trying to program or a programmer trying to be an artist? And I found that I can sort of work around a lot of problems by just using art assets because they don't cost me anything to sort of make. Like you see, there's a part of it here where the bridge sort of opens and closes. Now you guys probably have some sort of slider, a sprite across or something. But you'll notice basically over here, the bridge can literally I just rendered out that piece of the bridge and you'll see it actually kind of like concertina is closed. And you sort of walk across here. In the game so far, the main sort of like you can walk through the game from the beginning through to the end of chapter 4. There's 6 chapters in the game altogether. In terms of all the main puzzle interaction is actually done in the game. Basically, what I'm doing now is I'm adding in another layer of content over it. In terms of where you sort of pick up a PDA on the side, you can read about some kind of story and that's how the story will actually sort of open up with holographic displays going off at certain parts and audio logs and visual logs and that sort of thing. Yeah. There's also a lot of things I did as well, such as the little rotating holograms on the doors. It's taken directly from Dead Space. In terms of, I found that when you walked into a room, you didn't necessarily know what to do, but the minute you see there's a little red hologram telling you can't go somewhere, then that sort of gives a trigger of, well, maybe I need to actually try to sort of go there. And it also gives you interactions in terms of being able to turn on and off things to see the interaction. Yeah.
Sorry, it's one of the reasons that the Dead games will have a limited number of screens that practice. The number of puzzles, people don't want to repeat puzzles.
Yes, yeah.
You might do a puzzle where you teach someone how to do a mechanic, and then you have maybe a more complicated one, and then you'll have like a final puzzle.
Yes, yeah.
So I'm just concerned that, while you've done while the game looks amazing, what do you do in terms of puzzles?
In terms of puzzles,
just drag on and like,
yeah.
oh, this game just goes on.
In terms of puzzle design, there's a movement in the adventure game community to almost move away from puzzle design. In terms of, if you look at games like Dear Esther, it's basically got no puzzles at all. You literally just walk from one game to another. That's of course quite an extreme. And then you go to the other sort of extreme puzzle games, that are literally as sort of puzzle games. I'm kind of more leaning towards the fact that it's a story-based game than it's a puzzle game.
So it's more an interactive story.
It's more an interactive story with puzzles. And basically what I mentioned with the puzzles is that it's sort of not a case of, if you had to take the puzzle out of the game and put it in another context, it wouldn't actually make sense in that other context, so that I can make sure that the puzzles make sense only in the game. So it's sort of like a MacGyver way of actually doing it. If you put MacGyver in a room with a piece of string and a pocket knife and something, how would he actually get out of it? And if you put him in that same situation in a different environment, it would be a completely different sort of set of rules. So all the puzzles are actually hard-coded, which, while it makes for a lot of work and to actually putting the game together, it makes the actual flow of the game better. Yeah.
And so basically, like the puzzles are like the puzzles serve the story.
Yes,
it's not like
yeah.
you built a bunch of puzzles and
No, exactly. Yeah, it's sort of, if you take the puzzles out of the context of the game, they wouldn't make any sense. There's one thing where you've got to actually use a screwdriver to actually rip the eyeball out of a body and then use it on a retinal scan. And that was a part of the puzzle that was shown there.
Thanks.
And, and basically, you couldn't take that puzzle out of that context and put it somewhere else because that is that interaction that you have to do at that point. Yeah.
Can you add context sensitivity for the mouse for room transitions?
Sorry, say again?
Can you get context sensitivity for the mouse icon to change from room transition?
Yes, yeah.
Because I'm
sort of not knowing
sort of all where
how to get to different. So sort of where you go to like an exit thing, it actually has a little exit.
Even Baldur's Gate had that kind of
Okay.
or something, just so you know that you can actually transition.
Is this a click everything game?
It's a click everything game. It's a click everything. There's actually less interaction on these levels over here because I haven't gotten to the second layer of interaction on these things over here. So basically, every item, every object that you see will have a little description that will actually come up in the bottom left.
And you have to hunt for it.
So yes, yeah. But I've made sure that the things that you click on are pretty obvious. So it's not a part of a box, it'll be the box is there. Or if there's a dead body, you don't have to click on the guy's head, you just click on the dead body and he'll interact with the dead body. So I've sort of been quite tried to be clever with that stuff.
Are you considering moving this to tablets and all of this? I think this would be such an amazing game.
The biggest problem with this is just the sheer size of this. His animations alone, I think he's got 9,500 frames of animation currently, and that'll probably double by the end of the development cycle. It'll probably be about 18,000 frames of animation just for him as a single character. As I said, the actual levels will be about 150, 160 screens at the end of it. Each screen has about 200 to 300 frames of animation of things that happen in the screen. So just the sheer size and scope of loading that stuff into an iPad and then dumping every out when you go to a new room, I wouldn't even know where to start doing something like that. But definitely in the next game that I do, I'm definitely going to sort of think of doing it for a tablet sort of.
You could maybe break it into bits.
Yes, yeah. I think,
chapter 1, chapter 2,
yeah,
they do that all the time.
If I sort of found somebody who could actually look at transferring from one engine to the other. I know that the guys who are doing Vision there, the dead body hanging there, is pretty cool. And he's actually got a suicide note that you can read in the other one. And there's an entire relationship, love triangle between the three of them. So those are the sort of things that I'm going to be adding into the game. And the one guy that know the other guy actually was going to kill him. And there's an entire sort of like little sub-stories that go on there. Yeah.
Oh, no, I just wanted to ask what your kind of release plans are for this. Not in terms of scale or time, but in terms of actually, are you trying to make money for it, or are you going to...
Well, I mean, what I'd love to do is actually go into full-time game development. I have another game that I've actually got an idea for that I'm currently writing with my brother. It's a very similar sort of... it's a similar game in terms of like an isometric, high detail thing, but the actual setting of the game is vastly different from the kind of spatial thing. We are looking at sort of crowdsourcing certain elements of the game in terms of funding to actually kind of give the additional level of polish and stuff. But right now, it's not going to be this year, but it'll be next year.
Is it on Greenlight as well?
So, not yet. The Greenlight campaign will begin probably in the next month or two or so. What I want to do is I want to actually get a fully working prototype demo that I can get out to the journalist sites, Rock Paper Scissors, Rock Paper Shotgun, and Kotaku and those guys, and actually sort of get, I think if you've actually got somebody who's got a hands-on preview and can write an article about something, there's a lot more chance they're going to cover it than just somebody, that's generating it was pretty cool. Yep.
Some of your overlaps are good.
Yes, no. In this level over here, I'm still actually, you see his head sort of disappears and that sort of thing. This is sort of like a work in progress. I want to say, because this is a general idea of where the entire game is, where the meta game is. Chapter 1 and Chapter 2 are fully finished in terms of functionality. And this is Chapter 3 and 4 are basically in this same sort of phase. In fact, there's a lot of things I need to still sort out in interactions and that sort of thing. It'll be pretty... Yeah.
Slightly different question. How did you approach your build development? Did you build them roughly to get all 4 chapters and go back and polish?
No, basically what it is, I wrote the entire sort of document out, and then I just, because I'm kind of doing it on my own, just sort of whatever area I want to do that the mood strikes, and I just sort of jump to that sort of area. So that's why sort of I think that the areas have a very different feel to them across the game. So like the engineering thing feels different from the other crew quarters, which feels different from certain areas, it feels different from the end sort of medical suites and that sort of thing. With the idea being that because I get bored very, very quickly, I think to just sort of sit on one thing and one chapter alone and do that one graphic set would drive me completely mad. Yeah. Yes, and also the thing as well is that sort of, I think that if you sort of sit with the linear progression as an artist, you get better as you go along. So the thing is that I don't want people to sort of start the game and then I don't want the graphics to gradually get better as you go along. So it's a case of sort of, if I spread it out along, there'll be enough crap with the good stuff that you won't actually notice the crap, hopefully.
One of the things I want to say that's really nice here is the fact that the camera moves so far out sometimes and so far in.
Yes, yeah.
It's really nice to play a game where you can see
the sense of scale and stuff. Yeah, that's also something that was because I decided to do it one screen per area essentially. And I decided that I can play around with sort of the size and the scale of certain things as they move along. And some of them even get actually, this is pretty much the average distance, but some of them do get quite a bit closer than what he's actually sitting at right now.
On that, it feels very static. I don't know, it bothers me. I don't know if it bothers anyone else. Like I feel like I want to move the screen a little bit.
Yeah.
Did you see the screen shape?
I saw that and I was like, oh my god, the screen moved.
Yeah, look, I mean, it is a very sort of static game, and it's a very kind of slow game, and I really want to feel as sort of slow and kind of like the first half of Alien. Yes, yeah, where it's like really, really slow. So
it's just, like in your first screen, you have that little light moving.
Yes, yeah.
And that's been the only kind of, from what I've been watching, has been the only kind of animation except for with their and then you had the fan spinning.
Yes, yeah.
So I think what Steve was saying is because I feel the same. Like you just need, even if it's just like a bit of leap of
like some sort of detail.
Yeah.
Make the environment feel a little bit more alive.
I can show you. I've got some other videos as well that I can show. I mean, each area basically. What I've got to do is I've kind of got to divide it up as to an animation budget. So I've got to say, well, each area can't basically have like 500 frames of incidental animation if there's something larger that actually happens in that section.
I think you don't have to go through those many frames. Like on this screen, for instance, the devices and things, little lights. All you need is another transparent layer, like one light casting some shadows and highlights, speculators and stuff, and you just animate the alpha on that.
Okay,
just overlay a couple of
things like that.
Yeah.
That light in the corner does actually pulsate very, very slightly, so it's kind of what you do, but I'll just kind of try to punch that.
And noticeable that nobody will notice it.
Yes, yeah. So sort of so subtle that it's not a.
Yes, yeah.
And I don't know, maybe just one thing I thought, like when you enter a room, it kind of pans a little bit as you enter it. So
that would be very nice.
Yeah, just so you can see you're coming from this direction, you're coming in. There we go.
This is one of the. Was there enough movement now? This is sort of one of the. This is another kind of like a homage to Half-Life, and that basically listen to the graphic, the voice is an entire thing where she's actually telling you about the station and that sort of thing. So yeah.
Just some random. Have you ever played the deck from Lucas?
Yeah, I've
a
couple of times. I've actually I've got the soundtrack on my computer. Yes, yeah.
Can we?
What
Do we have a skeleton assembly puzzle?
We don't know. But there's a thing where you have to duct tape your spacesuit together. That's
cool.
kind of the same. Yeah. Anyone else?
Yeah. How many of this, or how much of what we're seeing is actually modeled in 3D, or just like painted in?
It's all modeled in 3D. It's I'm primarily a 3D artist. I'm an architectural artist, so everything is basically completely modeled in 3D. And then what I've done is now my brother's, he actually does all of our matte painting and everything in our studio, so he's gone over some of the other ones in the game that'll basically have add another level of detail of little dust and scratches. Also to sort of unify the graphics then, because like I said, I've kind of gotten better as I've gone along. And to sort of take things from, so there's a lot of these cinematics just dotted throughout the game.
The reason I ask is if you take what you've already got and you just project it straight back onto the geometry.
Yes, yeah.
And you get that into your engine, that's just going to put it on a different level there.
The thing that the engines are completely 2D engine, so there's absolutely no 3D geometry. And the 3D geometry that I'm using is is so sort of highly detailed and dense. The model that you saw of the train over here is the exact same model that gets used in the cinematic sequences as well. So sort of to go backwards and sort of then reproject it will be a bit of an issue. We did experiment at one time with doing a low poly 3D cage with the high poly substrate over with normal mapping and stuff to sort of get those effects. But that won't be for Stasis. That'll be if there's another game later on. That'll be for the next sort of game. Yeah.
In terms of like progressing through the game, right, how many times do you have to return to previous locations?
Basically what I've done is I've designed the puzzles as kind of like a multiple location based thing, but there's only a 3 at maximum 4 room there's only a 3 at maximum, a 4 room sort of gap that you have to ever backtrack for a puzzle. So you don't have to go back to sort of like 20 rooms back. So you're generally able to find anything in the general vicinity.
How often do you kind of have the player backtrack? Not in terms of how far, like does every puzzle require backtracking?
Every puzzle requires back. It really depends. It really depends. I'd say maybe about 30% of them require backpacking to a different room. But what you might need to do is you might need to see a puzzle in one room and go to another room to actually solve that puzzle. So you might see, for instance, one room has been flooded with gas, and the puzzle to shut off that gas in that room is actually in a computer system in another room. So the idea is to sort of treat the environment as even that you're doing one thing will actually affect certain parts of the other things in the ship and in the game. I don't want it to be sort of like a escape the room puzzle game where every single room that you go to is exactly what you need to get onto the next
The
room.
reason why I'm asking is because if you play this game, you know where the puzzles are. So essentially, if you have to backtrack once or twice, I'm going to probably have to do it 3 or 4 times because I don't know what the hell's going on.
Yes, yeah.
So just in terms of breaking the flow of the cinematic feel of the game, just don't do that.
Unfortunately, that's one of the things with the adventure games.
Most adventure games don't have this cinematic feel to it, which I love. I'm just saying I'm not saying it's happening. Just notice or take notice that if you want to keep this cinematic feel, if I'm constantly backtracking and looking for things, it's going to break that.
Yeah, I mean, it's not sort of it's not it's not sort of like a constant sort of backtracking all the time sort of thing. It's more a bit of information that you might find at one place will actually make sense if you go to a different area.
Like I said,
computer people, get it off us.
So there's a quick question about the engine. Is it just 2D or is there a Z buffer that's getting?
It's a completely 2D engine. Basically what happens is that every object
things that you have to still
and every object is essentially split with an alpha map, and there's a center point of it lets you know if you're going to walk in front of it or behind it. So that's why I go and I sort of either hand cut out or I use the alphas from 3D Studio and I literally mask out every single frame that actually that goes into the game, which is a bit time consuming, but the thing is that I think that it works a lot better than a tile-based solution in terms of the final look of the game, not necessarily in terms of actually making the game an easy game to make. Because to do a tile-based game like this over here would be much easier for me to do, but I don't think it would have the same sort of look and feel
And you've done this entire game part-time while you're working?
Yeah, I do it on weekends and nights, basically.
When do you sleep?
After I do a bit of work on Stasis.
Can you run? Can you run?
Yes, you can.
Kind of walk.
You can. No, you can run. That's a feature that I actually have recently put into the game. It's essentially a double click to run.
Yeah.
And then there's certain areas where you can't run, and there's certain areas where basically running will set off certain things.
Cool.
So the puzzle and the running is actually kind of. I don't want to have just like a random game mechanic.
The walking speed.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can you take us to like a typical evening when you work for them? I'm trying to comprehend your work ethic and I just can't do it.
Explain what you're getting into.
Basically, I'm an architectural illustrator. So if you ever if you go through actually Santon, and then you see those big billboards of the buildings that are going to be coming through, I do those illustrations along with my brother. We've got a 12-man company that actually does it. So basically, I sort of deal with lighting and 3D modeling and stuff every day of my life. I've been doing it since I was 16 and I've been doing it since I was 18 professionally. So for me to come home and do something like this isn't such a sort of a big thing. But basically what I do is usually get home at about 7:30 or so, feed my cats, do whatever I need to do, and then usually at about 9:30 get on my computer, work for 2 or 3 hours, set up renders, and then go to sleep. And then the next morning check everything's okay and do the exact same thing.
How long have you been doing it?
Stasis has been since December 2010. It was the December holiday project that I was bored and really wanted to do something in December, so I started doing a whole lot of environments and strung it together. I spent about a year trying to teach myself the programming side and trying to get the logic behind it, and actually looking at existing computer games and seeing how they actually set their stories up and that sort of thing. So there's probably been about 18 months of solid development on the game as it is now, because essentially after a year I scrapped most of what I had and I started from scratch with a story that I thought was a much sort of better fit for what I was actually trying to do.
Wow.
So,
of course, we have one more question in mind.
Yeah. Why haven't you made a ship that looks like a nice place to live? Horrible. No wonder it's
that's in Stasis too, you know. It's the idyllic American sort of.
No wonder. You expect shit's going to go wrong as soon as it's horrible.